Hello friends. Today we are going to discuss a very attractive character in the history of medieval India. This character is known for his ambitious schemes. He is known for his new experiments, bold experiments, and it is said that all his experiments failed. His detractors called him the devil and described his actions as a madman's frenzy. Friends, this character of medieval India is called Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So, for our civil services examination also, Muhammad bin Tughlaq is very important. They have asked Muhammad bin Tughlaq his new projects, his analysis. They have asked whether he can be called a mixer of contradiction. They have asked about his contradictory qualities. So, we are going to discuss Muhammad bin Tughlaq and try to understand different dimension of this interesting character of medieval India, Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Fine. So, one very important debate in medieval Indian history is, can he be called mixer of opposite? This question can be asked. They have asked in 1992 only, before that only, they have asked about his contradictory qualities, and they asked whether his contradictory qualities were beyond the grasp of knowledge of, you can say, common man, knowledge and common sense, right? So they can ask you a statement regarding Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Fine. First of all, try to understand who called him a mixer of opposite. See, when we prepare medieval Indian history, we are dependent on writings of some contemporary historian. For example, for Muhammad bin Tughlaq, we would be taking help from the writings of Isami, Ziauddin Barni, Ibn Battuta, then Badawini, right? So we would be taking, help from these writings, and of course some historians, modern historians, imperial, nationalist, and some Marxist historian also contributed. Fine. So who called him a mixer of opposite? You have to remember that on the basis of Ibn Battuta, the great traveler, right? On the basis of Ibn Battuta's description, Dr. Iswari Prasad, the great old historian, has called him a mixer of opposite. Fine. And you all must be knowing that Muhammad Tughlaq has been judged harshly. His detractors called him the devil, as I told you. He was called an amazing compound of contradiction. He was called bloodthirsty. He was called cruel, heartless. He was called a madman, Pagal Badshah. He was called an impractical idealist. He was called an ill-starred idealist. So, when you will read different historians, you will realize that Muhammad Tughlaq has been judged harshly. First of all, try to analyze his period. You must be knowing Muhammad bin Tughlaq, a 14th century ruler of Delhi Sultanate. When you will start analyzing him, you will realize that his period, his reign, started under inauspicious circumstances. Satish Chandra used this expression that his reign started under inauspicious circumstances. I hope you remember that, right, period. Sultan Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq was returning to Delhi after his successful campaign against Bengal, and then that collapse of an wooden pavilion, and that pavilion was erected at the orders of Muhammad Tughlaq. Why? To give a fitting reception to the Sultan, right? And when this structure collapsed, Sultan was killed. This led to a number of rumors. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was considered as the killer, murderer. Fine. So his reign started under an inauspicious circumstances. Criticism started, rumors. And then he started taking many reforms, or you can call it experiments. He is best remembered as a ruler who undertook a number of bold experiments, and the most controversial first experiment was the so-called transfer of capital from Delhi to Daulatabad. Why he wanted to transfer his capital? You must be knowing, because it was very difficult to administer south from Delhi. So no one can question his intention. Actually, historians question the implementation of this decision. And they say that number of people killed. And after a couple of years, he decided to abandon Daulatabad. But Professor Nizami calls this transfer of capital as the most grossly misunderstood measure of the Sultan. I indicated intention was fine, but he could not implement it. So his first project, called transfer of capital from Delhi to Daulatabad, is considered as a failure. You can see the expansion of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. You can see where is Delhi, where is Devgiri, Daulatabad. It was a big empire, and to administer it, he needed, right, a center in south also. But how to implement it, probably he could not judge. So yes, there was expansion. He needed second capital, probably. But it was not implemented. I repeat it. Another step which he took at this time was what we called introduction of token currency. Token currency, when you will read about it, about this experiment, you will realize that it was the need of the hour. And it was introduced in many areas, even outside India. But he could not prevent people from forging the new coins. And finally, there was proper mismanagement, so gross mismanagement. And finally, he decided to withdraw the token currency project also. So two projects, very popular initially. First, transfer of capital, and second, introduction of token currency. A far more serious problem with which he had to contend was the security of the frontier. It should be conceived in the light of the expansion of the Mongol power into the Punjab. So there were some concern about the security of the frontier. He wanted to develop what we call scientific frontier. In this light, you can remember his Khorasan project, his Karachil expedition. I hope you all have the idea about this kind of controversial project of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Khorasan, Karachil. What was the intention? Where it was located? When he started this project? All, you can say, you can say, points are discussed by historians, and there are different opinions about them. But overall, you can remember that these expeditions, Khorasan and Karchil expedition, also failed. After that, he was also known for his experiments in Doab region, increased taxation. That also failed, of course, because of some natural, right, difficulties. But here also, no one can question his intention. Muhammad bin Tughlaq showed a keen interest in agriculture. He tried to improve cultivation in the Doab region. He was a reformer. He set up a separate department called Diwani Amir Kohi. And when you will read Satish Chandra, he explained it, that how the area was divided into development blocks headed by an official whose job was to extend cultivation by giving loans, agricultural loans to the cultivators, takavi loans to the cultivators, and to induce them to cultivate superior crops. So he was a reformer. He had interest in agricultural reform. Then he was also known for his relation with his nobility. His relation with the nobles also presented some serious problems. You know why? He wanted to change the nature of the nobility. He entertained people who did not belong to noble families, but belonged to castes like barbers, cooks, weavers, winemakers. He even gave them important offices. So, character of nobility he wanted to change. In this context, you can remember analysis of Muhammad Habib. What Muhammad Habib said. His policy of creating heterogeneous nobility started the process of disintegration of the empire. So he started interfering. He was not taking nobility into confidence, into his confidence. So he started facing problem from nobility. And what was the result? What was the implication? Rebellions started. Rebellions by ambitious nobles. You will see many rebellions during this period. The rebellions took place one after another in different parts of the empire. In Bengal, in Mabar area, in Warangal area, in Karnataka area, Kampili area, in West Bengal, Awadh, Gujarat, Sindh, and the rebellions were more serious in South. I hope you have some idea about the emergence of Vijayanagar and Bahmani kingdom. So rebellions, problems during this period. He had also clashed with ulema, Muslim theologians, and the Sufi saints. There was some bitter relation. And they were very influential. That also created problem for Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So, what you can gain from this discussion, that probably he had some noble intention, but he could not implement his noble ideas. A modern historian, Mehdi Hussain, had very intelligently tried to prove that though he had contradictory qualities in him, yet he could not be called a mixer of opposite. So he opposed the idea of calling Muhammad bin Tughlaq a mixer of opposite. Satish Chandra said he was one of the most remarkable rulers of his age. He was deeply read in religion and philosophy. He was a scholar. He had a critical and open mind. He conversed not only with the Muslim mystics, but also with the Hindu yogis and even Jain saints such as Jain Prabhasuri. So he was a liberal, he was a scholar. Fine. So we are getting this kind of opinion about Muhammad bin Tughlaq. All his reforms, when you will analyze properly, all his plans speak of his wisdom and virtuous motives. I told you, you cannot question the intention. His aim was not to trouble his public. His plans were for the betterment of his public. But his projects failed because of incapable officers, non-cooperative attitude of the nobility. His ingenious mind was as quick in formulating new plans as it was slow in understanding the psychology of the people. Some historian pointed out this, that he could not understand the psychology of the people. He could never establish that rapport and mutual understanding with his subjects. It was so necessary for the successful implementation of his schemes. So, how can you implement one scheme without understanding the psychology of the people, without taking nobility into confidence? So, he was doing exactly that. Mehdi Hussein said, like an efficient surgeon, he performed a serious operation or a series of operations in the hope of letting the bad blood out of the body of his empire. But every operation brought forth complaints. He was liberal, no doubt about it. But his liberal approach was not liked by many orthodox theologians. He wanted to appreciate merit, talent, no doubt about it. He was known for a new theory of kingship, no doubt about it. But he could not, maintain the balance. He was prepared to give high offices to the people on the basis of merit, irrespective of whether they belong to noble families or not. But maintenance of balance, maintaining the balance was the real problem. It is said that probably time was not perfect for his new projects. Whatever he did, they were all ahead of the proper time. And unfortunately, Satish Chand said he was inclined to be hasty and impatient. So, in this light, what we can conclude? We can conclude that he was undoubtedly the ablest man among the crowned heads of the Middle Ages. You cannot question his ability. There is a statement that when he died, the Sultan was freed from his people and the people from the Sultan. This kind of analysis is slightly harsh. You cannot question his ability. He was undoubtedly the ablest man. It is said that of all the kings who sat on the throne of Delhi since the Muslim conquest, he was undoubtedly the most learned and the accomplished ruler. And always remember, his period of 26 years is a tragic but fascinating story of his schemes and projects, correctly conceived, badly executed, and disastrously abandoned. I said, his schemes, his projects were correctly conceived, badly executed, and disastrously abandoned. UPSC already asked this statement, and we can always conclude Muhammad bin Tughlaq in this context. Fine.